Macron takes on Le Pen again. Will the incumbent get 5 more years at the helm, or will the far-right National Rally leader take the reins of the French Republic? I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's newsmaker is France's presidential election. Well, 5 years ago, they faced off in France's presidential poll. Now again, in 2022, Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen are battling it out for the country's top job. Back in 2017, Macron had an easy win, picking up 66% of the vote. But now, according to the polls, he is the front runner, but his victory is not a foregone conclusion. In the first round of voting, 12 candidates were vying for the presidency, but none came near the 50% required to win. Macron did, however, come out on top with just under 28%. Le Pen picked up more than 23%. And just behind her, with almost 22% of the vote, was far-left leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon. All the other candidates received less than 10%. Well, throughout the presidential campaign, opinion polls have had Macron in the lead, but the latest surveys show the race is now much closer. One of the country's most respected pollsters has the incumbent taking a slight lead at 51%, with Marine Le Pen at 49%. It can't get much tighter than that. Macron and Le Pen are already back on the campaign trail, and both know the next 2 weeks will be decisive.
Car ne nous trompons pas.
Let's not be fooled. Nothing is decided yet. The debate that we will have in the couple of weeks to come is key for our country and for Europe.
Le peuple français s'est exprimé.
The French people have spoken and gave me the honor to be qualified in the second round against the incumbent president. Let me express to the millions of voters who expressed their trust in me my sincerest gratitude. I acknowledge with humility all the responsibility that comes with it.
J'en mesure avec humilité.
Well, over the past few years, we've seen a growing trend of far-right leaders campaigning their way into office. And now it seems possible that Marine Le Pen and her National Rally party will do the same in France. Le Pen's unconventional views on immigration and foreign policy seem to resonate with millions in the country, while Macron's popularity has steadily fallen during his presidency.
We are going to call on all the French to join us, those who got fed up with those 5 years in which France hit rock bottom, those who want to be proved again.
She is really the only candidate who can win and beat Macron, who did nothing but dividing our country for these past 5 years. For this, I entirely support her.
Needless to say, the next 2 weeks will be crucial for both candidates, but can the far right really rise to power in France? Joining me now to discuss that and more are from Paris, Alexis Poulin. He's an EU affairs analyst and the founder of the Modern World News website. From New York, we have Denis Franceskin, a member of Marine Le Pen's National Rally, and he's also the party's representative abroad. And from London, we have Philippe Marliere, professor of French and European politics at University College London. Thanks all so much for being with us. Alexei, let me start with you. First, I think it just has to be asked if either, a Trump 2020 scenario or a Brexit referendum situation is actually in the cards for France.
Well, it could well be. I mean, last time in 2017, it was clear that Emmanuel Macron will win over Marine Le Pen because we had the Republican front, as we call it. So all French electorate wanted to prevent Marine Le Pen to access power. This time, after 5 years of Emmanuel Macron, the cards are very different. And it could well be that the country will be split in two between the people who want to get rid of Emmanuel Macron and the people who want Marine Le Pen to access power. But still, some people don't want Marine Le Pen to access power, and some people still want to have Macron as a president. But this time, if Emmanuel Macron wins, or if Marine Le Pen wins, it would be a very short win, not very big win. So it will be very difficult to govern the country, given the discrepancies between the two candidates. One is pro-Europe, the other one is a nationalist, and we're going to talk about it. But it's it's two choice of society that are in the ballots, and of course there is a third political power with the Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the left, who was third man of the election. But
I want to talk about all of that. I mean, but what we know so far is that these two candidates really just illustrate the polarization of the public in France right now. But let me ask you quickly, Alexis, I mean, what has Macron done so wrong, to actually be in a position to lose to the far right when the French public seemed so united against that prospect just 5 years ago?
I think 5 years ago, Macron was unknown. He was not into politics, really. He was not elected before, so he was nobody, and people could still believe that he would be the man of progress he pretended to be. 5 years down the line, we've seen violence against protesters in France with the yellow vest. We've seen the crisis of COVID, where he's been trying to prevent liberties and freedoms from French people to protect them from the virus, but very badly. And of course, there is the latest scandal with all the consulting firms, McKinsey and other, being paid by French money to basically do the job of the government. And I think with all this adding up together, plus the fact that the economy is not so well because of inflation, Emmanuel Macron is not in a very good position to defend what he's done in these 5 years and to look like a good candidate.
Okay, let me turn to Philippe quickly, because for some, looking at the first round numbers, it can be kind of difficult to understand how Macron could lose the next round unless, Jean-Luc Mélenchon's supporters somehow sympathize more with Le Pen or, fail to realize that their apathy could play kingmaker for the national rally.
Absolutely. It's a very important point because the far right, despite making gains over the past years, is still together, with the two main candidates, Éric Zemmour and a third candidate called Dupont-Aignan. Well, they total no more than 32% of the share of the national vote, which is not enough to get a majority. So how come one explained that Le Pen might, although it's still unlikely, but might possibly win that election in less than 2 weeks' time? I think it's simply you have to look at the key issue, which is the vote transfer between the voters of other candidates in the first round. How will they vote in the second round? Will they vote for whom? And also, will they abstain? And I think you were pointing to the third candidate, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who came very close. He was really defeated by Le Pen by a whisker, 400,000 votes, which is very marginal. And look at the votes of the people who supported Mélenchon. I think, according to opinion polls, I think it is very split. I think up to a third will vote for Macron, apparently. Almost another third will vote for Le Pen, quite surprisingly, if Mélenchon is on the radical left. Some would be ready to cast their vote for a far-right candidate. She's no nationalist or conservative. She's a far-right candidate. And the rest abstaining. And that would be enough, in a way, with those figures to make the result extremely close, if not give Le Pen a victory.
Okay. Let me ask Denis. I mean, what role do you think Mélenchon's supporters are now going to play in your candidate's campaigning, really, over the next 2 weeks? Essentially, many are saying his supporters can play kingmaker, and she's going to have to rally their support.
Yes. One thing is Mélenchon was that high also because the left, in general, wanted to assure that he could be, one of the finalists, and we're not really sure what those voters will be. Basically, because they have spent like 5 years criticizing Macron, even harsher than Marine Le Pen did. So I'm not 100% sure that those people will automatically decide to vote, for the one that they call the banker, for instance. If they represent really the left, then they shouldn't go with someone who was obviously into scandals like McKinsey, for instance. I think the 30% that our panelist was talking about, I know that's what the poll shows, but I'm not really sure that this is what we're going to see. I'm expecting actually of absentees parties, in the Mélenchon's vote, and this can play, in Marine's favor, in 2 weeks.
Okay, I mean, just quickly though, what can we expect from her over the next 14 days? Because really, she has been the one out on the campaign trail. You can't say the same so much for Macron. She was the one that did the grassroots kind of campaigning, softened her stance marginally on some things to appeal to more people. What cards does she have left to play now?
I think she needs to continue to develop her ideas. One thing that troubles me right now is Emmanuel Macron is refusing to do many debates on TV, which, as you know, in France, if let's say Emmanuel Macron is doing interviews for 2 hours, then Marine Le Pen by law has to also do 2 hours. And what I've was reading this morning, that Emmanuel Macron actually is refusing to participate to all those TV news and journalist interviews, which will handicap Marine in her capacity to reach more French people through the medias. Okay. So I believe that's the angle he has chosen, and obviously as our panelist said, he has 5 years in office now, and I think the less he talks about it, the better for him, because obviously it was a complete failure.
Just quickly, Alexis, I mean, do you believe that is, in a sense, the strategy here, and do you think it's a smart one Macron is going with?
I don't know. I think he has no choice. He has to defend what he's done for these 5 years and be more present, because in the first round of the election, he didn't campaign. That's right. He was all on Ukraine front and pretending to be international president and have no time for the French campaign. And it didn't pay. So now he has to pretend that he's listening, he's there, he's meeting French people. So every day he's trying to go somewhere in France and talk to people who don't like him. We see some weird scenes actually of French people telling that how bad a president he is, and him trying to be a good guy and pretending he's listening. But I don't think this theater, this show will change anything. The election in the end will be: are you pro or anti Emmanuel Macron? Do you want him to go out, or do you want him 5 more years? And Marine Le Pen is there. Some people will vote for her, even if they don't like the extreme right, even if they believe that she might not be fitted to be a president. They will vote for her just to get rid of Emmanuel Macron, and she can count on that to some extent. So it's like a referendum, really.
Yeah, complete opposite, really, of 2017. Then, when it was about, you're saying this time it's are you pro or anti Macron, and this time it's are you pro or anti Le Pen. Let's broaden it out, though, now at this point. The clock is, as always, against us. So, Philippe, Marine Le Pen is pro-Russia. She's an EU skeptic. She is anti-NATO. So what would be the consequences for Europe and for the world if she takes the helm in France?
I think a Le Pen presidency would bring about major, dramatic changes to the current situation when it comes to those issues. And they are very important issues, particularly at this time. Yes, she's a so-called EU skeptic, although she has toned down, following Brexit, by the way, she's toned down a proposal to have a Frexit, which is the France leaving the EU. But I think she said a few days ago that she would contemplate putting the question in a referendum to the French people, which would be a way again to resurrect this idea of Frexit. NATO, she's already said that she's in favor of France leaving NATO altogether, which again at this time would make, of course, a very dramatic difference. So, and she's pro-Putin, there's no doubt. She's a previous campaign was financed by Russian money. She met Putin personally a few times. And she's already said during the campaign and during the war, as the war is ongoing, that once the war is over, we'll have to resume our good relationship with Russia, meaning with Putin. So clearly, she's the most pro-Putin candidate you can get, together with Zemmour, the other far-right candidate.
Do you think she's going to highlight that, though, in the last 2 weeks of campaigning, or do you think she's going to start rejecting or at least avoiding any talk of Putin to score some more points? Because, she apparently destroyed, I heard, upwards of 1 million pamphlets that actually had a picture of her with Putin that were supposed to go into her campaign. Just careful not to put that out there after the Russian attack on Ukraine.
No, I don't think she's going to put forward that kind of relationship at this time. No, I don't think it would go down very well with the French people. I think although there can be some harsh criticism on some constituencies of, within the French electorate towards the EU, there can be also criticism, particularly on the left, towards NATO traditionally. I think at this time it would be, committing political suicide. So no, she will tone down, she will try. And I think rest assured that Macron in the televised debate will present Le Pen as the Putin candidate.
Okay. Denis, I imagine you will agree there that she's not going to highlight her respect or relationship with Vladimir Putin over the next couple weeks. But let me ask you this as well. As a supporter, do Marine Le Pen supporters in general, do they like what they see right now in Hungary, for example, or even post-Brexit in the UK?
I think there's a confusion here. Marine, from the very beginning, was condemning, the invasion, from Russia. So what she did say was that she was concerned that if we don't find a diplomatic, solution, if we don't go through a politic of appeasement, then we also push Russia towards China and India. And if we just talk about economy here, is this scenario profitable for France and for European countries? So she was, to project, ourselves and how the country would be if we push to a more war, more death, more turmoil, or if the better solution is to and have France to be since de Gaulle, like the third voice, in worldwide conflict.
Okay.
So it's not so black and white. Yes, she met with him, but she also met with different, with many politicians, many international politicians. So I mean, it's irrelevant because she met him like months ago, years ago actually. So it has nothing to do with what's going on now.
Yeah, Alexis, quickly before we move on, I'd like to get your take on the relationship with Putin going into these last weeks of campaigning and France going forward.
I think this relationship it's been more difficult for Eric Zemmour to get rid of this Russian brand. Marine Le Pen did well because she condemned the invasion very, very quickly and saying that it's not acceptable in the international game. But Macron also tried to use the Ukraine conflict to show himself as the chief of the French army and as an international president. It didn't work well. I think in the end, the election is about French affairs. It's not about international affairs. Of course, it will be. It will have some implication. But so far, the electorate is really focused on what France is about in terms of economy, in terms of the debate on the pension and all that kind of things that are far, far from Putin, Russia, and Ukraine. It will come back, I think, after the election. But right now, it's not the main theme of the debate.
It's interesting, though, because many noted a very significant, let's say, bump in Macron's approval rating when he took the stance he took specifically on Russia's invasion or Russia's attack on Ukraine. So it is, in some cases, feeding very much into the French, opinion right now. I mean, do you think he fared well, at least with his approach, that there could be some kind of benefit? Actually, let me put this to Philippe. Philippe, go ahead.
Yes, you're right. It's absolutely true that the boost in Macron's ratings coincided with the start of the war over a month ago. It's also coincided with Macron entering the fray, the campaign, which he did very late. And I think that played in his favor. But I think that's also true that this effect, the so-called war effect, has now a bit vanished. It's gone away. That he's got really to now handle and answer questions about, the economy, public services, his own program, because he hasn't campaigned much before the first run. And that's also part of the problem. So, but I think there will be this very expected televised debate between the two contenders in between the two rounds. That will be a high moment of this campaign, will be watched by millions. And I think on this occasion, Macron, as the incumbent president, the guy who is negotiating with several parties, including Putin, he has Putin on the phone, the guy who is also very central in EU affairs, he will discuss Ukraine with Le Pen. And I think he will make sure that the French are reminded of Le Pen's links with Putin's regime.
Okay. And I mean, should anything sadly significant happen in Ukraine, or perhaps, other newsworthy, let's put it that way, items, not least even looking at the expansion of NATO very seriously with, Sweden and Finland potentially making bids. Do you think that could kind of shift the French public's focus when it comes to the election?
I don't think, to be honest with you, that that Ukraine is the central concern of French voters, and the reason I say that is because we have polls showing about what the five top concerns during this election, and the first one is the purchasing power. And that's what Marine campaigned on, for several months now. So I think that the French, obviously the level of the lifestyle of French people for the past few years has, continues to decrease. And they're more concerned about, how they're going to hand up their month and living decently, how they will be able, to pay gas, to go to work. That's, that's like daily issues that matters more for them right now.
Okay, but Denis, I mean, I think maybe we've been slightly avoiding some of the issues that she's become most famous for, and how those might factor in not just to the campaign, but to, should she win, how she will carry out actual policy making in France. She still says she wants to ban headscarves in public places, in spite of having a significant Muslim population in France. She's looking at cutting immigration drastically. How much is that going to be talked about in the next 2 weeks? And then what will she do if she does come to power?
One thing that she always mentioned was the referendum. She believes that, topics like immigration, like the French people should decide. They should decide, what they want, from that standpoint. So one thing that she will do immediately is to install referendums, and that's something she's, I'm sure our panelists can agree on this. That's something she has been saying for many years now. So I mean, I'm not really concerned about her implementing her agenda, but she's very clear that she wants people's approval on major social topics.
Okay. Alexis, we just have a minute left. I want to get your take on that as well, the more kind of extreme issues that she takes her positions on, the reason she is called a far-right candidate. How they're going to play out over the next couple weeks. Will Macron be able to potentially use that to his advantage as he has before?
Surely, yes. And I think that's why the Republican front will still work to some extent, because dividing with such subject will not work well. And so far, Marine Le Pen has tried to distance herself from Eric Zemmour and the people more on the far right than her on these issues. But she clearly stated that she wants to ban headscarf and go on with the Muslim bashing that we have in France, and that is non-stop, really. So this could well play in favor of Macron, who is on the opposite on this subject. But the other thing that will not play well for Marine Le Pen is that she's very isolated. A lot of the people working with her left during the campaign for joining Eric Zemmour, and now the question is, who will she govern with if she's elected? Of course, Emmanuel Macron will play with that, even if Macron's government is not really Top Guns.
Okay.
But that's where the campaign will be, really.
Philippe Marliere, quick final words.
I think a quick final word. I think she has a daunting task, if elected, to implement a program. A flagship policy is called, and it translates from French directly into English, national preference. National preference is about allocating state resources to French nationals only, i.e., in other words, discriminating against non-nationals. At the moment, this policy is anti-constitutional. She can't do it. Every time she will try to do it without changing the constitutional basic laws, she could be brought to justice and condemned, and she would lose. So that would be very hard for her to change all that. You know, it's not simply she can come to power, and that shows again that her program is radically different from now the mainstream neoliberal conservative candidate that is Emmanuel Macron.
Okay. Philippe Marliere, you will have the final word. I'd like to thank all three of my panelists, Alexis Poulin and Denis Franceskin, for joining us as well. Been a great discussion. Also, thanks to our viewers for watching. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at @_newsmakers, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.